Why, hello, ladies and gentlemen. On today's show, if you clicked on this, you know what we got to talk about. From over the weekend, the big story everyone's talking about in baseball land, your new 2022 Home Run Derby champion, Juan Soto. Are the Padres going to trade for him? Can they trade for him? Should they trade for him? All of those questions and more answered on You Know What You're listening to. Let's get started.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Tuesday, July 19th. As always, I'm your host with sometimes, occasionally, not always the most, Javier Reyes. You can follow me on Twitter at Javipeno, Javiipeno. Exclusively Padres content, though, at LO_Padres. And of course, check out the YouTube channel Locked On Padres on the old YouTube. If you're unfamiliar with me, I am a baseball fellow, a Padres fan, like yourself, most likely listen to this podcast. You can check out some of my baseball work outside of this podcast at justbaseball.com. And thank you for making Locked On Padres your first listen every day. We're free and available on all platforms, and I am rocking a sweet shirt. That's the bonus, ladies and gentlemen, of when you tune into the YouTube. All right, if you want to check out the video version of this podcast, they'll get to see whatever weird shirt I'm wearing. Sometimes it's not weird, sometimes it is just greatness. So go check that out, guys. And on today's episode, enough dilly-dallying, we got to talk about Juan Soto. This is straight up the most important story probably going on in baseball right now. It is probably going to be the most important story going on in baseball outside get to the playoffs for the rest of the year, not just for the Padres, but for all of baseball. And it's a big deal. It was announced, I mentioned it on yesterday. Go check out weekend recap of the series against the D-backs that Ken Rosenthal put out. Him and the Athletic, they're reporting that basically Juan Soto turned down 15-year kind of, you make a deal, $440 million, average annual value about $29 million, which is probably less from an average annual perspective than other players. Certainly, I know Max Scherzer's making more. I know Harper would be making more. Tatis would be making more. Francisco Lindor would be making more. All sorts of players, right? But in terms of the total sum, yeah, that's a lot of money. But there's a lot of angles to this, right? And the other thing that was being reported, I heard some stuff was said on ESPN yesterday that people are saying, hey, John Heyman mentioned it as well, that one of those teams that would be the favorite if the Nationals do. Right? I shouldn't say the favorite, but one of the favorites to land Juan Soto in a deal because they're the Padres and they're run by AJ Preller, who is one of the most aggressive, if not the most aggressive GMs in all of baseball. You could argue Jerry DiPoto of the Mariners sometimes can be super aggressive. There's all sorts of people, but with Preller, he's the one that's shown that he has a trigger finger that he's ready to fire. So it does make sense. The Padres also have a lack of some outfield depth. I'd say they have a little bit of a shallow outfield. I know that Estuary Ruiz just got called up. He's hopefully going to be a guy that can be really good. Fernando Tatis Jr., because it's likely, because of this outfield depth and wanting to keep him more healthy, that he'll go to the outfield. And then you've got Jurickson Profar, but then with questions surrounding Trent Grisham and questions surrounding, Will Myers, when is he going to be back? All sorts of stuff. It makes sense from a fit standpoint. And even if it wasn't a fit standpoint, one of the best players in baseball, you can actually argue he is the best player in baseball. I know his defense has taken a little bit of a step back this year. I understand that. I get you, ladies and gentlemen. I understand that that's the one chink in the armor. You know what I'm saying? That's the one flaw, the Achilles heel of Juan Soto. But the problem is that it quite simply does not really matter with the amount of offensive output that Juan Soto does every single year. This is a guy who's never had an on-base percentage below 400. He's currently at 405, and he's kind of taken for granted for the fact. His eye is legendary. They compare him to Ted Williams all the time, and for good reason. There really isn't a batter that we've seen quite like him in some time. In fact, I can't really remember the last player outside like a Barry Bonds who has had the amount of power that and the amount of plate discipline that he does. There was a couple, the Bryce year back from what was it, like 2016 or whatever it was. That's one example, but for the most part, there just really isn't any player like him. And like I said, I mean, if you look at outs above average, he's in like the 1st percentile when it comes to defense. He hasn't had a good jump on the ball, which is something that we thought was going away from last year. So while I have said in the past that the Padres, it would be good for them to have a good defensive player in the outfield, since that's something that they don't often have. In this case, it just simply does not matter. Like I said, you could argue he is the best overall player at just 23 years old. If you go by WAR this season, he's rocking a 2.6, which isn't the best in the world, and that's probably because of the defense. But last year, 7 WAR. Year before that, 2.5. And granted, that was a 2020 season, so that's a very good season. And the year before that, he's been great. And I remember last year his outside zone swing percentage, which is amount of times you swing at pitches outside the zone. Considering how many home runs he hit, considering his on base percentages and his batting average, his outside zone swing percentage was the best in baseball at 15%. The second highest was at 19%. So glimpse into Soto this year. And don't get me wrong, I know that his batting average isn't great this year. He hasn't been on base at the 450 level or whatever, right? He's just at a meager 400% right now, but and his batting average, like I said, is lower. He had a little bit of a weird start, but part of me wonders, number one, if that's just because he's playing for a crappy team and he's in the middle of kind of wanting to get this contract, obviously evidenced by these rumors and whatnot. But also on top of that, his BABIP is sitting at like 244 right now, which suggests that batting average is going to at least climb up to maybe like a 260, 270 level. And it doesn't matter because of the power and because of the walk rate stuff. This is what Juan Soto gives you. But it should be mentioned that the lack of defense most likely is a minus. Like I said, his WAR isn't, it's worth pointing out. So with all that said, there really isn't much more to say about Juan Soto from that perspective. When you look at now, let's talk about the Nationals. This is a team that is clearly going to be rebuilding. They have basically nothing, and they're stuck with a couple really bad contracts in Patrick Corbin and especially Steven Strasburg, a contract that was 7 years, like $270 million, and that's not ending till 2027. They don't have Trey Turner anymore. They don't have Max Scherzer anymore, obviously. Victor Robles did not turn out to be the top level kind of young player that they might have wanted him to be. They don't have Ryan Zimmerman anymore, duh. And they just overall do not have a whole lot of value. All they have is trade chips, and they're looking like a team that all they have is Juan Soto. So naturally, it makes sense that his name had popped up in rumors, trade rumors heading into the year. And I was one of those people, full clarity, I still kind of stand by this. I didn't really believe it. Just because it's a bad team doesn't mean automatically that they're looking to sell their best player to get value back. This is one of the top tier talents in baseball who could, based on his skill set, be a Hall of Famer, right? This isn't we talked about Brian Reynolds, and we still talk about Brian Reynolds a lot, and how he could be on the trade block, right? This is not Brian Reynolds. This is a top tier, like I said, what if this is Ted Williams? It certainly seems like it, right? It does not seem like there's any signs that Juan Soto is not, like, you could say even with Tatis, our beloved Tatis, maybe there's a universe in which he gets hurt too much and maybe he loses a step or two, especially as he gets a little bit older. Not that he is, but as he gets older and what have you, right? The question is going to be, can the Padres trade for him, right? Fundamentally, can they trade for him? We got to talk about that. And we also got to talk about, should they trade for him? But before we get into that, guys, let me quickly talk to you about something real nice, ladies and gentlemen. Something real nice. This is something that I personally would get Juan Soto myself, right? If he was traded to the Padres as a welcoming gift, right? Maybe you get him some jewelry. You get him some bling, you know what I'm saying? You get him something real nice. Well, BlueNile.com has you covered when it comes to that, guys. But primarily they're known for like engagement stuff. And heck, you know what? I will marry Juan Soto. I don't care. I'll give him that too. That's how good of a player this man is. But really, realistically, guys, BlueNile.com, they are, two parts of this kind of business: wedding jewelry, fine jewelry, so like engagement rings and bands, for wedding stuff, and then necklaces and gemstones and cocktail rings and like just stuff that you see people going out and about when they're trying to be fancy. Blue Nile's got you covered with that stuff, guys. Check out their website. It's really cool, and they customize everything, or I shouldn't say customize everything. They've kind of got you in every sort of thing you could want, from the shape of the diamond, the actual size of it, the clarity, the style. Maybe you want a dolphin looking thing. Maybe you're like, oh, they like this person I want to get this for. They like dolphins. You know what I mean? I don't know. It popped up in my head, guys. If you want a friar, the swinging friar, I imagine they can help you customize stuff and make it look like that, right? You can get them the engagement piece of their dreams. And they've got experts on hand 24/7 to help you out. So that's really good, guys. Make your moment sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com. And going on now is the Blue Nile anniversary sale, where you can save up to 40% on classic fine jewelry pieces and 25% on engagement ring settings. Plus, every order is insured, ships free, and arrives in discreet packaging that won't give away what's inside. Shop stress free and find your forever piece. Go to BlueNile.com today. And also, ladies and gentlemen, let me just say really quickly, go and check this out. Which NFL stars move the betting line the most? Starting July 8th, Locked On gives you the 50 most valuable players in the NFL from the odds makers at BetOnline. Available July 18th at Locked On NFL, wherever you get your podcasts, and on YouTube. So it's available right now as you're listening. Check that out. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get into the real juice of this. We talked enough about Juan Soto. I stats to make myself seem a little bit smarter than I actually am. I'm really not. I'm a dumbo. Trust me. Let me be very clear. I don't know why anyone. Don't listen to me. Don't listen to me. I'm a dumbo. Let's talk about whether or not the Padres should and if they can trade for Juan Soto. This is a team that has been mentioned in a lot of rumors. It was mentioned yesterday on ESPN. It was mentioned on Twitter. I know Padres Twitter's going nuts about this. And it would be fun. Let's be very clear. A lineup that essentially has 3 MVPs in Manny Machado, Fernando Tatis Jr., and Juan Soto. I don't know who the heck I would bat where, for the record, by the way. I literally don't. I think, just for a fun exercise, I think I'd put Soto higher between those two, just because of the factor that he can get on base at a higher clip than them, at a higher clip than basically anybody. So just because of the plate discipline, that might be what I do. Maybe bat him second, and then I'd bat Manny number 3, and then Tatis as the home run swinging beast that he is at 4. But I don't know. It would be genuinely something to behold. And I think it would give the Padres a little bit of a leg up on the Dodgers in that respect. Don't get me wrong. They have Freddie Freeman. They have Trey Turner. They have Mookie Betts. But I think that the combo of these 3, that's damn good, right? And I actually personally believe that Tatis can get better defensively, both at shortstop and in the outfield. I just think he's such a freak athlete, and the arm strength is great that he could, in theory, at least at some point. Manny's great. Juan Soto. That would give them like that's a great matchup. Tatis, Soto, Machado versus Freddie Freeman, Trey Turner, and Mookie Betts. That's like a real, that's awesome. You know what I mean? Like, that's a really fun matchup. And on top of that, the big thing with Juan Soto probably is going to be the years of control. 2.5 years left, the half obviously coming from this year, before he becomes a free agent. So this is not a rental. This isn't even just for next year. It is for 2 other years. And considering that the Padres are what many insiders believe, although I sometimes disagree, in win now mode. I don't think they necessarily have to be in win now mode. Then it makes sense. You're like, all right, great. We get this superstar for the next 2.5 years before even worrying about that 10-year deal, right? At least in theory. Maybe this is a situation where if you trade for him, they have to sign. I don't know. But at least for now, the Padres could absolutely do that. Any team could do that because it's only 2.5 years before he gets the big deal. So the Mariners could go trade for him. The New York Mets could go trade for him. The Cardinals could trade for him in theory, right? Because you don't have to pay him yet. It's great. The question is, can they? And the reason that Padres have been mentioned is because their prospect system has really, I think, been, what's the word for this? It's kind of being viewed in a different light lately. A lot of people, rightfully, the Padres prospect system, as far as I've been covering this podcast, and even before then, 2015, 2014, has been recognized and believed to be one of the best in history, right? And AJ Preller, through the Snell, the Darvish, the Musgrove, the Trent Grisham, the Mike Clevenger, the Austin Nola, like all these trades, even Emilio Pagan to a small extent with the Manny Margot trade, small extent. And then, when they used to have Trey Turner and when they traded for Will Myers, all of these guys, right? Basically, the Padres have given up a lot over the years. This is no secret. They've given up a lot of prospects. Even Jack Sawinski over with the Pirates, who's hit for a lot of power in the. They've given up a lot of their assets. So as a result, everyone's like, "Oh man, this is a top-heavy system." But there have been some really positive developments. Estuary Ruiz has broken out, right? He's arguably the biggest breakout prospect from the perspective of a guy that nobody was talking about this year, and now he's on the major league club. And then you've got obviously CJ Abrams, the number one prospect, one of the top prospects in baseball. Then you've got Robert Hassell, who's in like the 20 range in the top 100. He's really good and really important because of the aforementioned lack of depth in the Padres outfield. And then you've got some other guys, right? You've got some really exciting players that are developing, like James Wood, right? He's a super power bat. People are getting excited about him. You've got Robert Gasser, right? You've got MacKenzie Gore, obviously. I forgot to mention him, who debuted for the team this season and looked like a rookie candidate until he, ran into that rookie wall. He charged into that rookie wall. Let me tell you. So overall, there's just a lot of really exciting developments for the farm system. A farm system that we thought wasn't going to be stacked enough, and that the Padres kind of just had what they had for the coming years, aside from like your Abrams and your Hassell. But that doesn't seem to be the case. I didn't even mention Luis Campusano, catching prospect that the team has called up and sent back down numerous times, so maybe they're not super into him. So this is all to say, Jackson Merrill, top level shortstop prospect, right? Joshua Mears, some people like. Victor Acosta, right? Kevin Kopps, who's been on this show before. The Padres have a pretty okay system. It's not necessarily what it used to be. It's actually definitely not what it used to be. But that's why they're being attached to him, right? Because of the immense farm depth that they have. There are some other teams out there. The Mets, maybe they could do it. They have Francisco Alvarez, one of the top catching prospects in baseball. They have some stuff, plus maybe some major league ready players that could entice the Nationals. You have the Dodgers always, unfortunately, that has to be mentioned, with not just their Billy guy. I forgot the name of their prospects. I don't even want to know them, right? But Miguel Vargas, they've got a super deep system. And then you've got teams like the Seattle Mariners, who Julio Rodriguez, you've seen what he's done. He was in the final for the home run derby last night. Of course, Juan Soto ended up taking it home. That they've had some stuff. They have Emerson Hancock. They still have Jared Kelenic. Some people might view him highly, right? There's a lot of teams out there, but for the most part, it's between those that I just mentioned. New York Yankees, another team with guys like Volpe, Jason Dominguez, I forgot the rest of their guys, but you get my point. There's not many in terms of the prospect capital that can make a trade for Juan Soto. So naturally, the Padres, being as gun happy and trigger happy as they always are being favored. Here's the thing to say and talk about with these packages is that it's all theoretical. Throughout all my time watching baseball, and watching sports in general, these giant mega it's gonna take a lot to get this guy. That notion for me personally, and maybe this is a bias that is from an old time and maybe I haven't gotten over it, how we all see things growing up and it just sticks with us and forever. The David Price trade from back in the day. So, I mean, back in the day, I say like 2014. When that happened, I remember personally around that time, and I could be wrong about this, that people were talking about David Price. I mean, he's like a Cy Young caliber guy. He's going to strike out 270 batters a year and all this stuff. He's going to require a huge chunky sum of guys. And instead, it ended up being like Drew Smiley, and I forgot the other guy. It was not that giant of a package. So for me personally, I am very reluctant to believe ever that these mock trades that we say are going to be a reality, right? And one of the mock trades that we see going out on Twitter right now is that for the Padres to acquire Juan Soto, it's going to take Abrams, Gore, Hassell, James Wood, and maybe one other guy, maybe a Jackson Merrill. Now, in theory, right, when you just talk about value because of what Juan Soto's potential is and his skill set and the fact that this might literally just be a Hall of Fame player, yeah, I get why this is the type of capital cost on top of the club control, right? But personally, I just have a hard time believing that such a trade will happen because I also think that teams are smarter these years. these days. I don't think you get those giant, jumbo, thick boy, chunky boy deals anymore. I think that's something more realistic that might happen is, say, the Cardinals give up Jordan Walker and then someone outside the top 10, like three guys outside the top 10, right? It's never these top six prospects and then also a fruit basket and then also a ticket to Secret Wars when it comes out in 8 years. And you also get to see the ending of George R. R. Martin's Game of Thrones, and we'll also throw in a $20 million bonus. Like those jumbo deals, in my opinion, just rarely seem to happen. Rarely, if at all, if at all. With that all being said, guys, that still begs the question of whether or not the Padres should do it. Should they trade for Juan Soto? And my answer might surprise you a little bit. But before we get into that, ladies and gentlemen, before we get into that, let me talk to you about something that I know for sure, and that you know for sure probably by listening to this podcast, guys. The best protein bar in the world. They're, of course, the Built Bars, ladies and gentlemen. And from the people who invented the healthy and tasty comes the latest gift to your taste buds, ladies and gentlemen. You've probably tried the amazing coconut brownie chunk flavor. It's Locked On MLB, the group chat that we have. It's our favorite, let me just tell you. Well, your friends at Built have given coconut brownie chunk the puffs treatment. That's right, the coconut brownie chunk flavor you love in a deliciously chewy, marshmallowy, covered in 100% real chocolate. They've got it for you, ladies and gentlemen. But stop drooling. I know you. You're on your. Don't touch that dial. Maybe you're driving in your car home. You're thinking to yourself, oh, I want to stop by the store, get me some Built Bars. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I mean, you should. They're good for you. Low calorie, low sugar, high protein, and they're all delicious. They're all delicious. And because you're listening to this podcast, ladies and gentlemen, you can go to built.com and use the promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. So you, mister, driving in that car on that radio dial, why don't you stop by a gas station? First of all, get yourself some food. Maybe you stop at a Wendy's or something like that. And then you hop on your phone and use that code LOCKED15 for 15% off your order at built.com. All right, ladies and gentlemen. This is where the fun begins. Should the Padres trade for Juan Soto? There is a couple of points, and hopefully I hit them all. Let's first talk about one more time. I do not like saying that certain teams cannot trade for a player because of the aforementioned reasons about how these chunky boy deals just seem to never happen. Because overall, especially in the sport of baseball, this is not the NBA or heck, even the NFL, where just if you trade for Kevin Durant, almost who cares about the rest, right? You need three superstars. It's a superstars league. That's just how the sport works and whatnot. With baseball, go ask the Los Angeles Angels what it's like having two superstars, right? It's not taking them very far right now. You need depth, you need control, you need good coaching, of course. Obviously, you always need good coaching, but you need ammo. You just need assets overall to be able to make little tinkerings or whatnot. Of course, you need to be lucky, but getting Juan Soto does not automatically mean that the Padres are World Series favorites or even favorites to win the division. It's going to take a lot, right? So the question is, should the Padres pull that trigger? Now, if you told me that the offer is that they give away CJ Abrams, maybe Robert Hassell, and some back end guys, you know what I mean? And maybe you throw in, say, Batten or something like that. Okay. But giving up Gore, Abrams, Hassell, Wood, Gasser, like all these top level prospects, if that, and again, we're talking about the theoretical, we're talking about what in theory the value is. I'm not with it. I'm just not. And I know what you might be thinking is these guys aren't proven, right? These guys aren't proven at the major league level. We're already seeing that CJ Abrams is struggling. I think Abrams would be dealt in this deal because of they'll say, oh, we have Hassan Kim and we have Jackson Merrill coming down, right? He's a guy that people are viewing really highly. He'll be down here down the road, right? That's someone to count on for shortstop. And then they've still got Hassell and all these guys. So what we've seen early on, maybe he's one of those that's going to take a little bit more time and won't be that immediate splash. He won't be Tatis or Julio Rodriguez of the Mariners, who's this rookie of the year already, right? That's totally fine. But that's not what this is about. This is about having assets. And it's about saying you don't want to be the Angels. You don't want to be one of these teams that isn't really contending, but has to. right? Because they don't really have all that many assets in their farm. Over the past few years, we just talked about it. All those trades the Padres have made. I found it a little bit weird that Padres fans, and of course this could be the Twitter echo chamber, are so immediately like, you have to do this. After all the trades that have gone down, and I know that Soto would be arguably the biggest guarantee out of any of the trades that the Padres have made, like in forever, right? Like this would be such a slam dunk in terms of at least you know what player you're getting back. That they're saying immediately, like, all right, let's do it again. Right when the farm seems to be building up and you seem to have a little bit of depth there, you're already ready to say, let's blow it up for a team that you don't think is going to win the division, for a team that it's no guarantee. I'm just saying that's a little scary. It's a little scary. That is a lot of stuff potentially to give up. Remember, potentially, guys. Tomorrow they can announce that they gave up CJ Abrams and James Wood, and then they had to uh, take Steven Strasburg maybe, or pay like some of his deal, not even all of it in the deal. And I'll be like, all right, that's significantly less than we thought it might be. Right. And another thing is with those deals, while I keep mentioning that the David Price trade and say the Mookie Betts trade, and the Mookie Betts trade was a little bit different, but the David Price trade, some of those teams like Oakland's a great example. They just had a fire sale this past offseason. They gave up Olson, Matt Chapman, everybody, right? They gave up everybody. I think that one thing that's different about this situation is that those small market teams that trade guys, I wonder if they head into negotiations being like, and other teams are looking at them like, look, we're going to give you stuff, but we ain't giving you no jumbo package because we know you need to trade him because you know you can't re sign him. Do we think for sure that the Nationals know for a fact they can't re sign Juan Soto? Or maybe they're just like, why do we have to do it now? And because of the control and me wondering whether or not they have to now, I am wondering whether or not the Nationals are going to walk into those meetings be like, okay, we're just going to look for the best deal that we can get right now. I don't know if that means that for sure. So that's one difference between this and my theory of just players not being dealt for giant packages, if that all makes sense. I think that the Padres are in a weird spot. I do wonder, and this is something that has to be taken into account as well. The team is performing well right now, 52 and 42, a nice solid end to the first half. But for the most part, they've only really had like one winning season under AJ Preller, and that was in the short and truncated 2020. Is it possible that AJ Preller is on the hot seat? Because if that is the case, one, you never want to be in a situation where a coach slash general manager in any sport is on the hot seat and has the ability to trade your future for getting guys now because they're going to do that because they're trying to save their job. So if that's the case and Preller is a little bit on the hot seat and maybe it hasn't been fully reported on or it hasn't been fully gaining traction, then yeah, I could see it being very likely that AJ Preller is like, screw it, we're going to give our 4 of our top 10 prospects for Juan Soto. Let's go. Like, let's do this. And I'm not saying that that would be an immediately bad move. I just am wondering, don't we feel like we were at these crossroads not too long ago? And I'm not saying Soto won't work out. It almost has nothing to do with Juan Soto's ability. I'm just saying it makes me a little bit nervous. There's a lot of things on this team. You have the black hole ground ball gremlin at first base. I know I'd love to give him back to the Nationals in the deal. Maybe you say, oh, we'll take on Strasburg and then you take on the ground ball gremlin who must not be named. It's possible. Then you've also got, the issue with they have 3 pitchers that are entering free agency with Sean Manaea, with Mike Clevenger, and with Joe Musgrove, most importantly. Then, do you want to get another outfielder? Do you want to figure out this catching situation? Do you still think Jorge Alfaro is great? What do you do with the bullpen, right? And then what do you do with the fact that, like, with that pitching thing, Blake Snell, he's still on the books for next year, and so is Yu Darvish. I know Darvish has been good this year, but things tend to unfold. So do you want to go all in right now for a roster that has a lot of questions? Hey, we still don't know how healthy Tatis is going to be when he gets back. He's obviously going in the lineup immediately. I mean, he's Fernando Tatis Jr., but how right is he going to be? Do we know he's a plug in and play? That's an MVP candidate immediately. Or is he just going to be really solid and really good for the rest of the way, but not quite MVP level, just because he's kind of working back through the injuries and whatnot, and maybe learning a new position? That's possible. So look, if there was ever a player to go all in and dump your farm and take that risk and say, you know what, just the same way the Nationals ended up being a team that snuck in there. And once they just made the playoffs, magic happened and they won the World Series. I get it, right? Crazier things have happened. But I'm just saying, history, if we're looking at history over the past few years, I am wondering whether or not this is the right move. I personally don't think it is, based on the theoretical package it would take to get Juan Soto. And biased, I would love if they did, because it would be great for my brand. I mean, I get to talk about Juan Soto being on the Padres. It'd be like the biggest trade of all time. And AJ Preller is absolutely crazy enough to do it. He's ready to pull the trigger. But I'm just wondering, from what we've seen the past few years, do we want to do that? You know what I'm saying? And I know that the contract, I know the years of control. I know that you don't know what CJ Abrams is going to be. This is about assets and depleting the bank right now with some of the questions. You still got 3.5 years left of that ground ball gremlin. Do you want to go all in now? Or do you say, you know what? Let's trade for another reliever. Maybe we go get, who's a decent reliever that's out there? Maybe you go get a player of Mantiply's stature over in Arizona, who we talked about with Miller Thomas of Locked On D-backs podcast. Someone like that. Maybe you go get, someone from the Rangers, Brock Burke or something like that. Maybe you get a reliever like that. Maybe you trade for him. Dave Pirates, he might cost a lot, but maybe you just get a couple good relievers. You trade for an Austin Hayes type, right? Maybe even Ramon Laureano. You just beef up your depth, and then you say something else will be there down the line. And if there isn't, then we have we have Robert Hassell to be excited about. We still got Abrams getting better, James Wood, Gasser, right? Luis Campuzano, maybe he's a trade chip potentially if they just don't want to do anything with their catching situation because of Alfaro being pretty okay. That I can see. And maybe there's some guys we don't know about that are going to make the leap next year that Padres brass think, and that they'll be able to recover from the losses. I get it. That's overall just kind of how I feel, though. I kind of like having the amount of assets they have. That way, if this doesn't all work, they don't have to feel like they're in panic mode. Because again, like I said, they've got a lot of weird things to figure out with this roster. So I don't know if Soto is the only way out. Remember, this is baseball, and we see so many times that getting that superstar, albeit it'll be fun. I can't wait to do the podcast. Believe me, I don't care if I have to get off work real quick. I'll be like, guys, my baseball team just traded for Juan Soto. I quit. I won't actually quit. I don't mean that. If my bosses are watching right now, I'm totally just kidding, and I'm kidding about actually jumping off in the middle of my job. You get my point. It would be exciting, and it would be very in line with what the Padres do. I'm just worried that the theoretical package might be a little bit too much right now for a team that we're just still questioning a bit, that has a lot of questions in the offseason as well. But again, that's just my take. I could be dead wrong, and they could make this trade tomorrow for not nearly that much, and they win the World Series, and you guys can all laugh at me. It's fine. That's just what your boy Javier Reyes thinks. So those are my thoughts, ladies and gentlemen, on the Juan Soto trade. Hopefully you enjoyed my kind of breakdown of this whole thing. It's going to be fun. Hey, I'll tell you one thing. If you could tell me right now the Padres don't get him, but you can guarantee that the Dodgers don't, I'll take that. You know what I mean? Like, I'll take 100% right now. The guarantee that the Dodgers don't get him versus the chance that maybe the Padres get him. I really do think I would take that. Send him to the Mets. I don't care. Send him to the Yankees. Send him to heck, the Angels. Why not? It would be hilarious. Send him anywhere except for the Dodgers. You know what I'm saying? But hopefully you guys enjoyed that breakdown. For future episodes, still working on my 5 questions for the Padres in the second half. One of them will probably be about Juan Soto, so that should be a lot of fun. Crossovers. Hopefully you guys enjoy the All-Star game tonight. That should be a lot of fun. Hopefully Manny balls out. Same thing for Musgrove. Would love to see those two absolutely ball out, and hopefully no Dodgers do well. Hope Kershaw just gets lit up. I like Kershaw, though. I don't mind him. I don't mind him that much. Hopefully he does get lit up, though. Screw the Dodgers. But with that all being said, everybody, that about does it for today's edition of the Locked On Padres podcast, the only pod that may be better than the Padres themselves. Remember to subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts from. Follow me on Twitter at Javipeno, JAVIIPENO, at LO_Padres on Twitter, Locked On Padres on YouTube. And until next time, stay safe, and of course, stay faithful. My Fire Faithful homies, take care.